Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Tuesday. It's October 26th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And before we get into the chart lesson, just want to make you aware we've had problems with the website all day. So if you've tried to go there and had issues, and it's been sporadic off and on all day, but um, I believe we have all the kinks worked out now. And while we were already having an issue, there were some back end things that we needed to do that I've been putting off because it always puts the site down for a day or so, and you always have unexpected issues. So while we were already feeling the pain and the site was down, I went ahead and did some of those back end things. It's probably nothing you'll notice using the site, but you may notice that the pages load a little smoother or a little quicker or something like that. But other than that, you're probably not going to notice much. But there's updates we needed to do on the back end, and we did those. And obviously, and as you would expect, they did create some other little bugs. But I believe that I have all the bugs worked out. If you're using the site and you find something, a dead link or something that's not working, please let me know, and we'll try to address it for you. But just testing it, I believe we've got it all. And I started working on this last night or yesterday evening right after I did the video. So I started about 5 yesterday, and it was probably close to 5 before I got it finished today. So I'm pretty late getting this done, but I'm a little behind on emails and the web and just comments and everything else, and I'm a little late getting this video up, but it'll probably take me a couple of days to get caught up again. But hopefully the website is good now. We've got the kinks worked out of it. We got the issue fixed that we started with, and we did some updates and some upgrades that we wanted to do on the back end. And so I think we're where we want to be. Fingers are crossed. I know a little bit about this technical stuff, but I'm not the technical guru that can fly through this stuff. So I have to have help with it, and it was not fun today. It's been a long day. It was a late night last night. I was here till about 10 trying to get it fixed, and finally couldn't. And finally I was able to get somebody in here today to help me get it straightened out, and we're back in business. So again, if you find something, let me know. But I'm not going to waste any more time with that. I just want to let you know kind of what was going on, and then we were having issues. So, but I believe all the kinks are worked out now. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that we come in tomorrow and everything still looks good. So, but let's start off by looking at the daily chart here. This is the daily chart with the envelope bands for anybody. I always get people to ask me what these bands are. This is not a Kelter channel, or I forget what the other one is that they use with bands. We don't use any of that stuff. This is something unique that we use. I'm a chart reader, but these are proprietary bands that are based on some fib numbers and so forth, and they are very accurate, and they help us a lot on the daily chart. And that's the only place I use them, honestly. But when you start to get up in above this purple, up near this brown, that's generally oversold. And you can see this was today. This is actually the overnight starting here, and it looks like it's an inside bar so far. It looks pretty positive. So we could push higher, but my guess is this usually looks like an exhaustion bar, and we're overdue for a correction. So we'll see what happens next. We could just pull back and test this previous resistance, and it may act as support. We might continue on higher, but we're overdue to come back to that midline right here, because this middle band is a midline, and it's a 21 bar midline. So we're overdue to come back to that. We don't stay away from that very long. So anyway, this is what I'm looking at. It's been you can see we do have a break of this real tight, steep channel. We have a closeout side and a new high. So everything's in place that we could get a correction. Just don't bank on it until let the price action show you when we're going to get a change. But this is just giving you a look at the daily look. And, I've been saying we were overdue for a correction. And it looks like we may start to get one. Maybe tomorrow we'll correct. We could push higher still, but I'm guessing we're going to, this looks like an exhaustion bar, so we're overdue to pull back. We'll see what happens. But let's go over to the 2,000 tick chart. Okay, here's a look at our 2,000 tick chart. It looks a lot like a range day, and maybe it is. And you can kind of see the open was pretty close to the midline. But notice that we spiked up and went into this channel, and we just kind of ran out of juice up here, so to speak, and sold off. Um, we had a close outside here, but we couldn't even make a new high. The resistance was just too strong. The selling's getting too strong in there, and we corrected. And notice where we came back to. This is the close from yesterday. You know, I've got both of them on here. If you missed the other day, uh, the dash one is the close, which is the one I'm thinking is going to be the more important one. But this one is the 3 o'clock because a lot of people exit at 3. So I've been kind of watching them, but I'm pretty confident this is one we want to deal with because you can see a lot of times if prices open far away from that, they'll try to come back and test that before they go on. Even if they're going higher, they may continue lower. But you can see we came down, we tested that line. We actually went a little lower. We came back, tested a few times and went higher. Now we're back down in that same area, bouncing up again. So that's an important price. We'll probably remove this one at some point. I'm going to watch them a little bit longer. But those closes are important spots to watch for. And prices will come back and test them quite frequently before they move on. So it's not 100%. It's like everything in trading. Nothing's 100%. But pay attention to those. We want to know where the open is. And actually, there was a gap on the chart too. So that was another reason. And I failed to mention that this morning. I was just trying to get that chart up and posted before we went back to work on the website. I'm not sure if many of you even got to see the mid-morning chart because it wasn't long before there was problems with the site again, and we were down for a good bit of the day with issues. So okay, I had a little interruption there. I had to take that one, but yeah, you can see there was a gap. We came back and not only tested the open, but we filled that gap, which would have been the high here, and that would allow us to continue higher, but we really didn't. We just kind of continued sideways. So quite an interesting day, really. Unfortunately, I didn't get a lot of chance to watch the chart today because I was busy with the site. I did take one trade early this morning, and but other than that, I didn't trade today, unfortunately. So just one of those days for me. And but I do believe we have everything behind us and we're good to go again. So but let's get this, zoom in here, go through the trades, and again you can see the trend up. We had a close outside, we couldn't make a new high, and this thing just sold off strongly, and then we bounced a little bit before selling off again. So we could see prices try to make another leg down like that one here. Obviously, I would have to go into tomorrow's trading to do that, and generally by the time I get in tomorrow, I'm going to ignore what happened over here today, and other than the close, the open and close, and that kind of stuff. So anyway, let's zoom in, talk about the trades, and wrap this day up. I'm going to go through these. There's not a lot of trades today, so I'm going to go through them rather quickly. It's been a long, last night was a long evening and a long day today, and I'm ready to take a break here, so I'm going to move through these pretty quickly. But anyway, what you've got here, right into the open, we're in this tight range, and there's just no setup. There's a couple of nice bullish bars here, but it doesn't give you room to really get out. They got lots of stem on them. Let me make it a little bigger. You can see that. And then you're probably saying, well, what about this bar here? Well, technically, this is your signal bar, but your stop has to go below the low of the swing, which is down here. And let me explain that. Basically, what you've got is you've got a new high here, and you got a first entry, and then you pull back, and there's a correction there. So when it breaks higher, that's a second entry. I would have preferred it better if it broke lower, but it's still a second entry. And it's it's a failed breakout with a higher low basically as well. So it's another way to look at it. It is an inside bar. It doesn't make an equal low, but I still like it just simply because it bounces off the trend line, confirms it. We're probably going back at least to the high of the range, so as long as you got room to get out there, and because the trend had been up on a failed break lower, you may catch an important low. So if you take this trade, you get a runner because they don't come back and get it, and you get a lot. You can probably catch a lot more of this move here. So just something to think about. I mean, even if you just exited when you started going sideways here, you get several points off a runner. And that's why I like this trade. I went back and forth about whether to make it green or not, but I think if you understand what I just explained, that's not a terribly advanced trade. So I think that's one that most of you could realize is a first entry and then a second entry. In general, we don't look for second entries in a tight range like this, but if you get a setup and it is a second entry, pay attention to it. I mean, it tells you something. So, but we run up and you try to go short once and then twice. So if it breaks higher here, it's a failure, and you get a little double test of the breakout area. And that's another little, I made this one green. It's a little more advanced. It's a little more aggressive, but it's still a trade I like. I could have easily made it blue, but as well, it's right there on the borderline. So, but we'll just leave it as it is. There's actually another failed second entry short here because this makes a new low. So you could look at that as a failure. I'm not as crazy about this one because you're below the EMA and it's just a first entry long. And actually, I think it breaks higher and then turns down and would have stopped you out before it went higher. But anytime you enter and you get stuck on an engulfing bar, don't let it stop you out. That's my opinion, because a lot of times they just run the stops, and then if it is truly an engulfing bar, wait till it completes and then put your stop under it. And if you get stopped out then I mean, it's kind of tough on these, but that's why I didn't mark this one. It's you know, anytime you take an engulfing bar, it's questionable. You do get a second entry here, and it's really tempting to want to enter. But when you start getting 3 bars in a row with matching highs and prices can't break higher and the EMA is holding, don't take that second entry. This might have still worked. I don't even know. Let me just see how many ticks we got in there. But don't take that second entry because you can easily get stopped out. Looks like there's only 5 ticks, so that would have been a 4-tick failure on you, and that's actually, you probably wouldn't have got stopped out. You would have had to ride all this out, but it did end up getting too, so you wouldn't have got stopped out on that. But I don't recommend that trade because you could have easily gotten stopped out there, and you could have easily gotten stopped out here before it pushed up there a little further. Generally, that second entry in an uptrend, they probably push to run those stops that they know they're probably up there, and they might have pushed it up just enough to get the scalp as well. So this is an uptrend, so the odds are you may push up, but a lot of times what they want to do is they want to trap you out the bottom, and then that they're able to push it higher. They can't get it going here, so they'll let it drop out the bottom and trap people, and then notice the buying comes in, and then it starts going higher again. And basically what we got here is you got a first entry short and a second entry short. Notice the new low. So it's another failure. I don't like the higher low. Not a very good setup, but on the trap here. And even then it takes it a few minutes to go up. But the key is, do you have enough room to get out before here? Which you do. Doesn't matter. It keeps going anyway. This turns out to be a fairly nice trade. So, and I think you would have got a runner out of this as well. So, just see what we got between here and here. Yeah, so you're not going to get out of there by that point. So when it goes higher, you're going to get a runner out of that. So anytime you get these failures, that's why I like them. Then we come down first entry, second entry, and again, that's an engulfing bar. It looks a little congestive. Just wait and see if you get a higher low or a better setup, which you do here. Which I marked that one. The problem was you didn't quite have a new low in yet, but you already made a second entry, and then you made a higher third entry. And I just like it because it's back inside the range. Originally, I had this range right here, and it's like a triple test or whatever, but I ended up moving it down. You can see it does fit better across there then. It's a little aggressive, but if you got room here, it's congested. You can see that, so you got to be careful with it. Of course, we turn down up here. I just think it's too early to look for a short, but if you took that trade, you could argue for that to be green. but it's just dangerous because we almost always come back and test the EMA when you pull through it. And here you tested it once, twice, 3 times. That's like a triple test of that resistance, and it acted as resistance. So, and you got plenty of room to get out before here. So you may take that trade, but that's advanced. You need to understand how prices react and retest things and all those rules. And so I'm going to leave that one green. A really experienced trader might take that trade and call it blue, but I'm going to leave it green. Of course, we bounce at the trend line. You don't get a setup though. You come back, you bounce again. You still don't really get a setup. You could look at this as a first entry, second entry that failed and take that, but I just think you're better off to wait on the high or low, and that's a second entry long. Notice you're coming down, you get a first entry, pulls back, and then when it goes higher, that's a second entry if it breaks higher. Again, just make sure you got room to get out before here, because that's where it goes to before it sells off strongly again. So you got enough room to get out there so you get a nice scalp. And unfortunately, you get a really nice move here and you don't get a chance to enter it. You can't enter right there short, so wait on a lower high, which comes right here. But then you're just kind of getting that sideways congestion and you don't get a setup. So hey, maybe you wait on the failure, which comes here. It's not a good failure setup. It's not back to the EMA. It still looks a little congested. Just not a good setup. Yeah, prices go on, but it's still not a good setup. You make a new low, you get a first entry, you come back to the trend line, you get a second entry, but that's your signal bar. It's not good enough. Then you're just kind of going sideways. I don't recommend entering there, but before long you get a failed second entry long and a lower high, and it's like a little breakout pullback. It's your first break of the or close outside the trend line. Nice bearish bar. It's a little close to these lows, but that's your first real close outside. You're going to make a new low, so you might let it break lower and drop a limit order, maybe a tick. If you did much more than a tick or two, you would have missed the trade. With it being a trap, it's probably going to push on down. You don't know it's going to go all the way down like this, but you're going to be able to get a scalp out of that more than likely. So I like that trade. And of course, now you got your break in a new low, so be real careful. Even though you get a second entry short there, and I think it works, I don't like taking it. It's congested. I think it's really risky. You can kind of see that congestion right there. That's a really risky trade. And I think you got enough room to get out of there, but it's just not worth it. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's congestion. You don't have a whole lot of room to play with here. Yeah, my guess is there's not enough room to scalp out between here and here. Yeah, it went lower, but it could have, notice how it closed inside, and it could have bounced off of that. So, but notice we run up, we push through the MA, we get a first entry short, we pull back, we get a second entry, and there's also a first entry and then a second entry long. This is a little congested. It's all inside this bar, but it is a second entry. It does get above the EMA. It does pull back and test it twice. So you may take that trade. It's a little aggressive. I'm not crazy about it. And of course, you pull back, you get a first entry, second entry. Signal bar is no good, but you make a new low, you get a first entry and a second entry. Actually, new high, first entry, second entry, but you also get a first entry, second entry short. So it's a failed second entry short. It's a second entry long. It's a nice signal bar that failed out of the congestion to the low side. So there's plenty of room back up here to this high. It's a little questionable here, but with that trap, you're probably going to test this high, but you can see that's what happens before it pulls back. And then it pulls back again and gives you another failure right off the trend line with a nice signal bar. I like that one. I really thought it'd go higher. It doesn't. It's still good for a scalp, but that's all you're going to get out of that. And then you get your first close outside that trend line. So you're still looking for a new high. You do get a higher low here, but that's a little bit too congested for me. Everything's kind of inside that bar, and that's what gets dangerous. Watch for these big bars and then how everything's inside that. That's not a good sign. It does go higher, but just wait a minute and you get a failed second entry short and a nice reversible. This is a really big bar. There's 12 ticks in that bar, but it's still a trap. It still works. It doesn't continue much higher. The other problem with this trade too is the fact that you've already got a close outside the trend line and a new high in place. So you need a trap to really to enter that, but it's still aggressive. And of course, you just kind of start going sideways. And this one's tempting, but if you took it this late in the day, you get burned, and you can see all that congestion. That's a good enough reason to stay out of that. Notice that big bar again and how everything's inside that. Stay away from that point on. And then that takes you into 2 o'clock or 2:30. So, yeah, not a lot of trades today, but there's a few decent trades and a couple of runners as well. So anyway, I'm not going to beat around the bush. It's almost 6. So I'm going to end this, get it processed and uploaded so y'all get a chart lesson today. Again, apologize for the lateness of it, and apologize for the website problems today, but I hope we got them all ironed out and we're back in business. And if not, we'll continue to work on it, but I do think we got it now. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com. And we'll see you next.